With October 20th only a few weeks away, the race for municipal office across Alberta is hitting the final leg of the campaign. From every corner of the province, candidates for mayor, reeve, and council are stepping forward with ideas for stronger communities, smarter growth, and brighter futures. Now, in this edition of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025, we turn our attention to the city of Cold Lake, where we are sitting down and chatting with Chris Vining, a current councillor for the city of Cold Lake who is running for re-election. Chris, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about your re-election bid to stay on the City of Cold Lake Council for another 4 years. As this is your first time ever being on the show, I've got to ask a very simple question, which you've probably heard a few hundred times if you've ever listened to any of my interviews. Where
Yep.
does your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Chris?
Yeah. So if people know me, they've like people that really know me know a lot about this story already. I'm a Southern Alberta kid, born and raised around in the Vulcan area. Graduated high school in Coaldale. My great uncle Pete was the mayor of the village of Lomond for years when we were kids.
That's
So
a deep cut if I've ever heard it.
shout out Lomond. Shout out Brad Cook, my cousin. He's running for re-election on council right now down there too. So, yeah. So my uncle Pete, like I said, he's my great uncle. We used to go up from Vulcan all the time to go have Sunday dinner with him and my auntie Anna. And so he had a welding shop there in Lomond for years and years, and finally he had to retire from it. Wasn't physically able to keep doing it anymore, and so then he ran for council, and then they made him mayor, and he did it for years and years. Like I can't even think of how long, for 20 plus years that he served. And I remember by the time I got to high school and being a little like, because that started when I was pretty young. By the time I hit high school, I remember sitting down and having a chat with him because he was a World War II vet and grew up in the dirty 30s, had to leave home at like 15 years old, and those kind of things just to seek work. And I remember asking him, like, why would you do this? Because I remember how the story behind it was getting a phone call, how the old black phone on the wall ringing, and somebody was mad because the dump was overflowing and couldn't get out there. So you, Don, let's go jump in the old Dodge Fargo and truck her out to the dump and light it up. And I remember coming back in and sitting there, and I'm like, why do like, because my aunt was annoyed because she had to wait whole dinner. And I said, well, why do you, Pete, like Uncle Pete, why do you keep doing this? And his answer was really simple. He's like, if you could do it, why wouldn't you? Like, if you have the ability, you have the time, then you do. And so that's kind of always kind of driven my whole, even in my career as an educator and stuff too. Like, if you have the wherewithal for it, why wouldn't you do it? So yeah, so I moved to Cold Lake here in 1998. Met my wife up here. Settled in, had kids. I ran from council the first time around in 2003. I actually lost to our current mayor in that election by 6 votes. I was number 7. He was number 6. And that kind of got it started. And then I ran again in 2010 and got on. But essentially, it was just about I really enjoy serving my community. I enjoy being a part of it. My big thing at that time is I had very young, my kids were really young at that time as well, and my mom had moved up from Lethbridge, and she was living in Cold Lake now, and it was kind of about those two sides, right? Because I think a community is really defined by how we treat our young people and how we treat our retired folks that have helped build all this. So that was kind of my whole thing. It's my Uncle Pete in a bit of a sense of duty and just really wanting to see us have the best community for my family. And I think if we got a great community for my family, it'll be a great community for other families as well.
So first elected in 2010, now running for re-election after 4 terms or if I'm doing my basic math,
Yeah,
2010, 13, 17, 21, so 4 terms. So this would be
okay,
your fifth term.
that's correct.
What continues to drive you to give back to your community? Because some people might say, okay, 4 terms is good and that's time to hang up our hat, but you're deciding no, a fifth term is where I want to go. What's driving
Yeah,
you to run this time?
I think it's that continuation. Like, we've really started building some good stuff here in Cold Lake, and And our mayor that I've been on council the whole time with Craig Copeland. He's been our mayor. He's stepping down. He's decided it's time for him to step aside. So we will have a new mayor coming in this time around. And when I was looking at it, there was some thoughts. Do I do this again or not? I'm getting close to being able to retire from my teaching life. But I just thought the consistency is important, right? That the background, that institutional knowledge and stuff of where we've been and what we're doing and where we're going, and kind of a new council is going to come in with a new vision, but I think it's really important that the new council also understands what the vision was previously, right? Because so many of those conversations that we had behind, not even behind closed doors, but not a lot of people show up for budget meetings and things like that.
You don't say. You're saying people
Yeah.
don't show up to
I
meetings
know,
there?
like, yeah. So it's important that for that new council to understand, like, there was a rationale why we decided to go this way, and at the end of the day, like, I'm a huge believer in I'm one of seven that get to throw a vote. Anything that I want to see done differently, I need three friends to come along for the ride, or else it doesn't happen. But at the same time, I'm not a I've lost probably most votes on a council are pretty much full agreement, but the ones that we have disagreed, I've probably lost as many as I've won. But at the same time, never been one to take that personally or take it to heart. Just like, nope, it's the will of council. And so we're going to move forward, and we're going to hopefully, and everything that happens in government, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal, right? Like, if you just want to hope that the decision that gets made and the will of council, whether it's a will of legislature or parliament, that you've made a good decision and we get the best out of it. Never cheerlead for the opposite to prove yourself right. Cheerlead that the decision that other smart people have decided to go with is the one that's also right. And hopefully hopefully it works out. And if there's something I can do to kind of help that along, then I want to be doing that as well.
So talking about the role of counselor, I can imagine you've come to the realization after your time in office so far that you have to make some very tough choices around that
Mhm.
council table. And that means there are going to be people who just vehemently disagree with everything that
Mhm.
you stand for and everything you vote for. How do you make those tough decisions? Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to lay your head down at night and say, okay, I did the
Yeah.
best I could. How do
Yeah.
how does Chris do that?
Yeah. Well, and I've always said, the great thing about being a municipal politician, right, is that it's that, you get to defend your decisions every day. Whether that's in my staff room at school, right, with folks that I'm eating lunch with every day that I work with, or it's, there's a great bottleneck in the bakery section at Sobeys. And I don't know how many, my kids won't go shopping with me, right? Because you get stuck in the bottleneck, and sure enough, right, you're getting asked about a decision that gets made. And I've never shied away from that. And I think it's just standing by your personal convictions. And again, it kind of goes back to that first thing I said: is this a move that I think is making the community better for my family and for other families that I do it? Can I justify it to you in the bakery section at Sobeys? Like, can I say, this is why and this is where I stood? And hopefully, it's becoming harder and harder to get to that place. But, hopefully, if you still disagree, we can agree to disagree and move on. And it's unfortunate that it's becoming harder. It feels over the years here, especially the last 5 or 6 years, have become very, very challenging. Sometimes to get to that, we'll just agree to disagree, shake hands, see you later, and hope it, and we both leave hoping it all works out, right? So that's my thing.
So we all have our own moral beliefs that what is right and what is wrong in our
Mhm.
community and what we believe is right for our community. But as an elected official, you have to listen to people. That is your job, is to listen to
Mhm.
people. The old saying is you have two ears and one mouth. You need to listen twice as more than you talk.
Yep.
Now, how do you balance that as a counselor? And how do you see yourself being able to balance the needs of the community with the needs of what you believe is right? Because
Yeah.
I can imagine there's some days that you are conflicted about what you should vote on because what you're
Mhm.
hearing from the people. Who wins in that internal struggle in Chris's mind?
Yeah. Well, and it comes from a lot of different directions, right? I think there is hard decisions that get made on council, even if sometimes you really think that, oh, maybe this is a good thing and we should be putting our money behind it. But at the same time, in the past, maybe we haven't, like, done that. So that becomes a bit of a shaper as well as to how do I feel we should vote, even though maybe I might really like this particular thing that we're doing, or maybe I disagree with it completely. But then it comes around to is, well, what's our track record been like? What have we believed in the past? And as a council, kind of what, because so much of it, and especially like so much of it comes down to money and funding and things, right? And so when we're setting budget or even when we're setting policies, kind of where have we come from, right? And is a decision that we're making now, does that conflict back against what a decision we've made in the past, right? Because a lot of times there's things on there that it's like, well, I could go either way. But then it really becomes about like where have we been? Where would that take us, right? So if we decide to pivot on an issue, right, and decide, oh, okay, well, no, we'll support this. We've always had a thing with groups that come forward to council, really good meeting people, but to try to stay out of like operational funding is a good example, right? Like where groups are looking like they're looking for that money that's just going to sustain their operations, and you really have to. Is that a municipal responsibility to put money into your organization just so you can sustain operations, right? And so that becomes a bit of a tricky one, to stick with, and sometimes they have to say like, no, like I really like your organization and stuff like that, but this is just something that we don't do, and we're really hopeful if there's something else we can do to help you, get that grant you need in order to keep going, like those kind of, that's kind of an example
How
of.
much of your job is just communication and actually, and I hate to be this way, but I'm gonna have
Mhm,
to call a spade here a little bit if you don't
mhm,
mind. How much is it being honest when you're communicating with people? Because you're right, you can't solve everyone's issues, and you can't
mhm,
solve the operational issues of an organization who doesn't want money but needs money to survive, and they may be
mhm.
providing a valuable service, but that's not the role of the municipality. And
Right.
sometimes you just have to be blunt with people. How
Mhm.
is it hard to be blunt with people,
Oh,
especially in this polarized world?
it's really hard. We've had organizations that have come in front of us that's the person that's representing them is a first cousin of my wife, right? Like those kind of things, right? Or you have organizations that come forward where you've been out there with them, like you've flipped burgers at their charity event, like you've done the fundraising, you've gone to the gala, you've bought you've supplied silent auction items, you've bought those things, like, and you really, really believe in the organization, but at some point you kind of have to be like, well, no, but I just there's a line here, and it is, and it's really challenging, and again, it becomes one of those things where you hope you get to a place that the agree to disagree piece, right? Like you really need it. I get that. However, this is where we're at, and I'm really sorry. I wish we could do more, but it doesn't fit, right? Like, and so, and again, like, and in this political climate, that's one of those things that's becoming a real challenge to do. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about council and being on there since 2010 is I've built a lot of relationships with a lot of people, and even in my role as a principal and a school teacher, for 27 years here in Cold Lake, like you kind of got to reach back on those relationships and stuff too, because that's the other part. I get a lot of folks that come in front of council and are part of organizations. I mean, I taught them in high school, right? Like I remember when they were 15, right? Like, which is great. But at the same time, like you have this relationship with them too, and you want to be able to help, but you have to at points you have to just kind of stay with your convictions, right?
I'm just saying, if my principal was on the council, if I had to ever present in front of them, I would be shaking in my boots the entire time, going, "What did I do to get sent to the principal's office again here?" Not that I
Yeah,
ever, if my mom and dad are listening, I never got sent to the principal's office
yeah, there you
ever.
go. Yeah, right on.
I want to turn back to a piece that you talked about, and then we're going to talk about the issues because
Mm,
I can imagine that that's what most people want to tune in listening
right.
to. Now, your role as a counselor is to represent everyone.
Mhm.
And in your 15 years on council, I will probably put a dollar to dime that you have never been elected by every single person in the community.
For sure.
So that means there are people who will just not agree and not vote for you.
Mhm.
But your role is to represent them. The
Yeah.
ones who disagree with you, the ones who vote for you, the ones who don't.
Mhm.
How important is it for yourself as a counselor, as a candidate, to listen to everyone who is
Mhm.
respectfully, and I say that is just a key
Mhm.
word there, respectfully communicating with you? Because we
Right.
know people are going to be angry and they're going to be frustrated and they're going to lash out sometimes. But when there's a
Mhm.
respectful dialogue, how important is it for you to listen to people who are on opposing sides of you to ensure
Mhm.
that you're hearing from everyone?
Yeah. I think it's really important, Chris, that we deal with you're dealing with the like in a situation like that, because sometimes these things can get very contentious as well. And you know exactly how somebody feels about you and feels about maybe your other politics or maybe what their perception of your personal politics and stuff are as well. And that's another thing that's become really challenging over the last half a dozen years or so. But at the same time, let's talk about the issue. I want to deal with the issue, not the person. Right. So yes, we might not get along and maybe maybe you've said horrible things about me in the past, right? And posted them online or whatever. But every person that's ever, sent me an email, made a phone call, I will have that conversation with you. I will have that conversation, but we got to stick to the issue. And if we stay on the issue, then we can have a conversation about it, right? And I want to hear you, and I want to hear your viewpoint, right? I want to understand, that seek to understand, right? That was a big one that our CAO always talks about. Let's seek to understand that part of things. And if we can keep that dialogue respectful and on topic, right? Because that's the other part, right? Like let's keep it to the issue. Then we can have a dialogue about that, right? And we can have that conversation, and I can hear you, and I'll hear you out on it. And I think and it's just important to have those. Like even when we have people come in front of council and they don't like a new zoning. They don't like that the two lots next door to them just went R3. They don't want a higher density, development in their neighborhood. It's listening to what they're saying, but then at the same time, also, if I disagree, respectfully saying like this, and this is why, right? This is
Yeah.
needed. It fits. I get that you don't like it, and, and I think, and again, it kind of plays to some of the hard conversations that you're having as a council now too, because sometimes it really feels like if people bring an issue forward and they disagree with it, if you don't agree with them, you're not helping, right? You haven't listened to me. You didn't agree, so you haven't listened. And I want people to feel like they've been listened to, right? I heard you, I understand. It doesn't mean I have to agree with you. But I do owe it to you to listen, right, to what's going on. We had one just a couple weeks ago. A really fine lady from our community with her dad came forward and they were worried about a development or rezoning of a lot that was next to them, worried about traffic and stuff. I don't think there was any doubt in my mind that no, this is a good use for that lot. I think that we should go for it. But really listening to what they had to say, but then asking the questions of of our administration too. Like if they have parking concerns, what are let's clarify for these folks. What are our parking policies? What's going to have to be provided on site? Those kind of things. So to try to alleviate a little bit of if they're bringing up concerns, what are the things that we as a municipality have control over? We don't have control over the fact that there's 3 school buses that go past the front of your house. I can't control that. Can we make sure that based on that we can hopefully make sure we have parking so that the folks that are living in this new, fourplex or whatever it is can all park on property so they're not clogging up the streets more, right? They're going to choose where they decide to park. But at the same time, I think it's important that and that they understand that, yes, we hear you. We don't think you want 10 more vehicles parked on your street. So how many are going to be able to park on site? Like things like that, just to try to, and again, to help them understand that there's reasons why we support it, right? But there's also reasons why we're hopefully that we can kind of alleviate some of your concerns.
So, as we say, let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about the
Sure.
issues. Let's talk about the issues that you're hearing. Now,
Mhm.
we are recording this in the final days of September. So that means by the time this airs, we got about 2 weeks left until the campaign officially
Mhm.
wraps up. And I can imagine you're talking to people, as we just talked about communication. What are you hearing from Cold Lake residents in this election that is different from past elections? Are there unique challenges that they are talking to you directly about? Or are the issues that you're hearing this election the same that you heard 2021, 2017, 2013?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Like the 2021, we started talking a little bit more about affordability, right? And community affordability and taxes. And we were in a pretty good position at that time. We were able to still keep taxes down. The last 4 years have really seen some real spikes in our expenses at City Hall. We've had, and so that's affordability and tax increases. We have had to have two of the larger tax increases that we've had since 2010. Just because we're in a bit of a we're a bit of a revenue challenge, but we are more challenged by some really big expenses that have gone on. Our RCMP costs have spiked. We've gone up to where we've crossed the threshold now for population where we got to supply 90% funding. That was a huge jump. The union agreement that was made with the police officers, that caused another huge. So those kind of two issues, especially, really compounded on each other. And when you flip that to the other issue, which a big one in town, like, because we talk about affordability and tax increases, crime and homelessness and civil disorder is another one. And that's not unusual, I don't think, to like probably 75–80% of our municipalities in Alberta, rural or urban, are all dealing with that. So I think so we're all kind of dealing in these same kind of issues, because I'm not, we're not the only ones that are having to deal with these rising, costs of policing and the cost and just overall inflation. Utilities are up, insurance rates are up. And these are all things that if we're going to operate the city, we still need to recover through our revenue. I have to pay that tax bill too. And I like to remind people, right? And that
Breaking news here: councillors pay taxes.
I got to pay that too. I don't like to see my taxes going up. That's less money in my pocket for my kids and for my family. But I'm also speaking from a bit of a privileged position, right? Like, I've got steady income. Like, I'm not worrying about my next month's paycheck, right? So that's a big part of that. So I have to make sure, again, listening to where folks are at, but trying to massage that against the services that we have in the city, and where can we cut, and where, and there's that difference between kind of using a scalpel versus using a cleaver on things to try to, adjust our expenses. But there's sometimes you're just not going to get away with it. You can't, you're going to have to raise taxes in order to get the revenue you need in order to operate the city. So the affordability one is certainly there, and that's
can I jump in on that for a second?
Yeah,
because
sure.
you bring up something that I talk about a lot on this show, and I want to just put this on the record here, because you're talking about a lot of the affordability challenges that the municipality plays, but has no control over. You talk about the federal government and the unions and the pay that you have to pay to the police, which the police is a good service. Don't get me wrong. We need the police to be in our communities. I'm assuming if I polled every single municipal council in Alberta, they would say we would love more police, but it costs an arm and a leg.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a direct impact on your budget.
Mm-hmm.
And that means sometimes that you're going to have to make those tough decisions around that council table.
Yeah.
And when you tell people, yes, we have to raise our taxes 4%, 5%, 3%, or whatever you have to raise it, the caveat is, unfortunately, we have no control over some of the things that we have to raise our taxes for, even though people will say, no, that's the municipality's responsibility and you're the one that's raising our taxes.
Yep.
How do you communicate to people, we have to raise your taxes, but we're not doing it because we want to. We're doing it because what services would you like cut if we want to keep the police that we are so reliant on in our community?
Yeah. And it's, that's a great point, Chris. Like, because even to go on, just to tag on to the law enforcement piece, because one of the things we've heard from our community, and it kind of goes to this crimes and homelessness, they want more. They want to see more bodies on the street. They want to see more, so we have added on RCMP officers that we're paying for out of the municipal pot that are beyond our allocation. We brought in a police dog service that we're paying for that it wasn't part of our allocation, because these are things our RCMP and our law enforcement are saying we needed. We've added on to our bylaw and peace officer in conditions in order to create more coverage and more of that. We're supplying and helping with downtown security service so that they can have, like, kind of neighborhood patrol types things in our commercial districts, again, to try to keep this disorder down. And it all comes with those added costs. And so, when we're doing one thing to try to fix, then, there's an added expense on the other side. And so we keep on maneuvering to try to do that. And so then you go to that, okay, now let's look at the expense side. And so it is a challenge to explain to people, to try to lay it out for them. And again, it kind of comes back to that, having really good civil disagreements and having those conversations. Because, and it's becoming more, it's a little more challenging in the again, in that social media world where people just want to like cut and lay blame, but aren't necessarily interested in having the dialogue, right? That we want to have. And sorry, the phone's ringing. So we're into this situation where you're trying to explain, and then people just point out, well, cut that, cut your city transit. We don't need city transit. Okay, well, you don't need city transit, right? You don't need city transit. Like, I've said to people, like people's talked about, because that's an easy one because it sits right out there, and it is. It's a decent size expense on the budget sheet. But I bet, well, we could keep city transit, and I could cut two police officers, and that would cover a bunch of the cost of city transit. Or we could go into our energy center with our arenas and stuff, and we could, as a council, probably double what our hourly ice rental fee is, for minor hockey and user groups, and we'd still be lower than Edmonton, and we would be way lower than places that I know like Halifax and these other places that I visited and what they pay. But is that the right idea too? Because we can find other places to find revenue, or we can cut. We could reduce the hours of all our arenas. We could cut her down to 8 o'clock at night. That's it. We're closed. Right? No second shift. We don't have to worry about any overtime. We're going to cut back on maintenance. But what's the repercussions, right? There's another side to this now where, kids can't get on the ice, and we don't have enough ice time for minor hockey. And then, like we have junior team, you're dealing with all these other things. So the solutions are there, but every time you cut a program or you raise a fee on a program, there's an impact there, and it might not be, if you're the taxpayer that I'm speaking to, it might not impact you, and so you're going, yep, do that, double those hockey fees, like, triple them if you have to. Like, I've had people tell us that our arenas and stuff should be break-even operations, and I know communities around that have break-even operations. I alluded to Halifax, like. But now you're talking, instead of $140, $150 an hour ice, you're talking about $450 an hour ice, right? So there's the impact, and
Well,
then you got to, like, how does that play, right, to the people that are still using that service as well? And it doesn't mean we can't massage it, right? Like, we've massaged hours on our transit to try to cut that back and make sure we're really focused on exactly when and where we need to be and when we need to be there. Same thing in our big recreation facilities. Do we have to be open at 5? Can we open at 6? Like, how many people are we going to impact if we don't? If we close a little bit earlier, or we maybe completely close up shop on holidays, what does that save us, right? So there's, again, it's kind of looking at that more with the scalpel as opposed to the cleaver, right?
well, even the scalpel metaphor though can be challenging
Oh
because
yeah.
I often use this analogy, but I hate keep on repeating myself on this show, but I think I do it a lot because I think it's needed. There's a mother out there in Cold Lake who is a single mother who's on a fixed income, who has two children and needs that
Mhm.
pool opened at 7 o'clock at night, who needs the library to be opened.
Mhm.
There's that father who's looking for a job to put food on their table. So when you look at massaging the service levels, you have to take into the picture
Mhm.
those individual needs of those services that you provide.
Mhm.
While you look at the bigger picture, the macro picture as the
Mhm.
community as a whole, you can't forget about the individual. And I'm going to quote my
Mhm.
favorite movie here, Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 2. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
Few.
It
Yeah.
does, but it doesn't as well because you have to remember the individuals as well.
Mhm.
How do you make sure that the municipality is providing for everyone that it can with the limited supply that of money that
Mhm.
you have? Because yes, I can imagine you hear often,
Mhm.
yes, you need to cut down services for X, Y, and Z. And when
Mhm.
we talk about recreation for any municipal person who's out there knows it's the biggest loser in any budget that you provide because you
Mhm.
always run recreation as an operational net loss. You do not make money on recreational because the cost of
Nope.
owning the building outweighs the cost of actually providing the services. So when we talk about affordability, and I say this respectfully as a counselor, but also someone who's running for council, do you think the city of Cold Lake has found that balance to ensure that the services you are providing helps as many people as it possibly can.
Right on. Yeah, great, great question, Chris. Like, I'll go back to one of my favorite social study topics. Shout out Jid Vu, class of '87, Kate Andrews High School. And we talked about, because I remember us engaging in this amazing debate on majority tyranny, right? The tyranny of the majority. And I think when we talk about those families, right, they are the minority, but they still deserve to be served by our community. So, and it goes to the same thing, like our transit system that we have in Cold Lake, does it cost a lot of money? Yes, it does. Is it used by most people in Cold Lake? Nope. A very small percentage of our population, young people, working folks and stuff are using this and using it on a regular basis. But because the majority of people don't use it, is that the reason why you scrap it? Right? Because the majority of people, if I were to throw a poll out there or have a plebiscite about it, it's probably going to come out, yeah, get rid of it. But is that the right thing to do?
Yeah.
So and so I really think that really plays into those conversations that we're having, and I've really enjoyed, like, the councils that I've worked with since 2010. Like, we've had these great conversations about this stuff, and recognizing that, yeah, sometimes these decisions are unpopular, but there are people that still need these services, right? They need a really strong FCSS, right, program in our community. They need those recreation opportunities to be affordable, right? And what does affordable look like? And one of the big things that I got on when I got on council in 2010, I really believed in, was that we didn't seem to have really kind of rolling anymore. Like, I remember as a kid, there was always a ball diamond where you and your buddies could grab a ball and a glove, and you guys could go play a big game of pickup on a ball diamond, and nobody was going to give you any grief. You could go play soccer, some pickup football, play street hockey. I call it disorganized recreation. Disorganized recreation in today's environment, because of safety and different things, looks different than it did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so, but where can we provide those opportunities to make sure it's not just the kids whose parents can have them in minor hockey and put them in soccer? And like when we talk about that single mom with the kids, or the dad that needs the arena, but also have those opportunities for folks to just be able to grab a pair of skates and go to the outdoor rink and have a good facility that they can play on. If you got kids that like basketball, we got basketball hoops now in town that are caged in properly, they're maintained, right? We've added outdoor rink space, we've added a skate park, we have a mountain bike park in town. Like, and I call it, like, it's that disorganized recreation as much as anything else. So it's also providing those opportunities within that sphere for folks to be able to go use without having to, there's no punch card. They don't have to, they're not paying $10 a visit, right? Because even, you take your family out. We have our swimming pools out on the base out here at JJ Parr. But yeah, like if a mom wants to bring her 3 kids, to the pool, and they're not members or anything, it's, I can't remember exactly where the fee is, but it's probably around $30, right? To bring your family out there to go do a public swim. But at the same time, you can't afford the $30 and it's in the summertime, like, hey, we got a splash pad down at the beach, bring your kids down. They'll have, like, they don't have to go into the cold water. Maybe they don't know how to swim, but they can have a great experience at the splash pad. And we've got a couple of those in town. So, it's those kind of things that I really believe in too, that create those opportunities for folks in the community to be engaged, and as we move along, it's looking for what are those next opportunities where we could do that. Is it, with theater and the arts and those kind of things as well, because we focus a lot on recreation. Like, I'm an old jock, and so I can identify with those opportunities, right, when I see them. There are things that I don't necessarily have the background in, but at the same time, I really appreciate when people bring these things forward to say, okay, and then we can look at it through budget and stuff, look at costs and how much things, what we can and can't do with that, where it sits on our priority list for things as well. And, and like I said, and just try to massage those things and move them forward, because, yeah, like, you want to have a community where, like, you can't be everything to everybody, but you want to have something for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of my thing. Like, are we providing opportunities for our seniors to be able to be engaged and have opportunities and like to do things, so they don't feel like they have to move to your Camrose or your Lethbridge, to a retirement focused communities, right? That they can stay in Cold Lake and still be serviced and feel like they have opportunities, and same thing with our young families, right? you don't have to be, rich, a rich family in Cold Lake, but you can still afford to have your kids in soccer in the springtime, right? Like, it's things like that. Like you might not be able to do everything, but I think everybody should be able to do something.
I would agree wholeheartedly, but I want to flip back to the second issue that you brought up, and that is
Mhm.
safety and houselessness.
Yeah. Oh,
Now,
yeah.
I've had the pleasure of chatting with some of your council candidate who are running against you, but running as at large in the city of Cold Lake. I've had the pleasure of chatting with two of the mayoral candidates, and this
Mhm.
seems to be a topic that seems to be brought up more often than not.
Mhm.
Now, we can talk about what has happened, but let's talk about what the solutions are and what the next 4 years looks like. If
Yeah.
you're hearing about this right now, that means I'm assuming the next 4 years in the next term, next mandate, this will be a priority number one, number two for this council.
Yeah.
What do you see as yourself being around that council table and helping address this issue?
Mhm.
Because this is not just a municipal issue. This is a provincial, this is a federal, this
Mhm.
is a stakeholder issue that we all have to come to the table. How do you see your role as councillor if you are elected on October 20th
Mhm.
to ensure that this is a top priority in this next term of council?
Right. Yeah, and as you said, like this is a challenge across, right? And we've heard about it. Like when I go to AB Munis conferences, we're hearing it there. When I go to FCM or federal one, you're hearing it there. And everybody, and I think my role as a counselor again is part of it is to listen and I'm not an expert on public safety. But I am an expert on, I think, on what I see occurring. And do I see it getting better or getting worse? I think that, we've tried a lot of different things, and I think we'll continue to try, right, to try to alleviate. I really believe in continuing to engage our other stakeholders because a lot of the issues that we are talking about are related around provincial and federal issues around healthcare and policing, and some of it's around bail reform that we've talked a lot about, and that's in the federal one, but it's also a provincial responsibility because we're struggling in Cold Lake with having enough crown prosecutors and judges and court dates so that we can quickly move people through the system that are having it and they're not getting their charges, these charges thrown out because we can't get them in front of a judge. Um, all of those things play into this. And I think, we need to continue to lobby for what we need. And where it's really become challenging, though, is we can't ignore what's going on and just say, well, we got to wait for the province to come through with it. So we keep working on it. One of the, we just had a big one here. We had some folks that the RCMP were looking for that were part of a violent attack here in Cold Lake, but we also identified where they were, and it was in an encampment. And we've taken a very aggressive stance on encampments on public property and even on private land. To say no, like we're not accepting this in our community. These are dangerous. These are hazardous. There's weapons. There's all kinds of bad things that can happen. Like people are living in conditions with very potential for carbon monoxide and fire issues and everything else. We're not having it. But if you're going to do that, and you're going to go heavy on that enforcement side, on the municipality side, then you also got to hit it with some compassion too, because these are folks that are struggling, right? Not too many people I know have chosen to be, or choosing to be an addict or choosing to be homeless. But it's also the lifestyle they're at because that's where they see their path. And so, how do we connect them with services? And so one of the things that we did here over this last term here in the city is we as the municipality said this is not a municipal responsibility to house the homeless. However, we can help. So we went and purchased a drilling camp, and had it installed on city property, kind of away from our business district. Like it's not perfect, but it's the other places where people had proposed situations weren't great. And we set it up there and we paid the money for it. We got it all set up, and had and for way less than what it would have cost us to build a shelter, because a commercial kitchen and it's got all your fire detection, multiple, showering and all those kind of things, responsibilities. You can split it for men and women. Like it allowed us to be able to hand over to a group that we had of really, really passionate people here in town who want to help. and we were able to hand them because we couldn't find them a lease somewhere in the city that was going to work and work with the neighbors, but we were able to help get them there. And now they're working with the province to get the funding that they need in order to be able to operate this. But it also allows us now then to take the stance that no, this kind of disorder and encampments and things like that, we can't have it. And I know there's lots of people and a lot of them friends of mine that don't like it when they see the pictures going up of encampments being torn down and us hauling tons of garbage off to the dump. That we should leave these folks alone. But in my heart, I just in our community, I can't say that. But I also in my heart can't say, well, just you got nothing now, go away. So how do we
It,
connect them back with services, right? So we work with them to get them back connected with our John Howard Society folks, and they'll help with like if people are looking for treatment, if they got health issues, identify. These are folks that can help them with that. Our FCSS has a program that if you're got here to Cold Lake and now you're stuck, they can help you get back to your home community. So we're trying what we can in order to be and we are getting very aggressive with trespassing orders and stuff. And this is part of the one where we could get a little bit more help from the Crown, quite frankly, on dealing with some of these things, and from our judges on helping, and on our bail side, because we have some folks that, yeah, like it's very aggressive, it's over the top, and we're trying to make ground on it, and we're trying to stay super consistent, but with the compassion side that no, if we're going to take you and haul you away from the front of Walmart because no, this is not okay. You've been given a trespass order. You may not stay here now. But if we take them from there, we have services that we can connect them with. And I think that's the important part is we need to be strict and enforce, but we need to have another compassion on the other side. And that's my opinion of it, and we keep on working that way. And at the same time, I'm still wide open to more ideas. I recently attended last year the Recovery Capital Conference that the province had put on to look at to try to understand the province of Alberta is taking a new approach with recovery and addictions and mental health. So what are you doing? Like let me see this. And where does your goals as a province to be able to, with this recovery system that you want to do, where can we as a municipality dovetail into that to try to push that along? Like, if you need sites for a recovery community, right? And you're out there looking, okay, well, let's look. So, hey, City of Cold Lake, MD of Bonnyville, Town of Bonnyville, hey guys, like these are folks that are living here. Is there something we could be doing? Is there a spot we could be looking at? Is it in the city? Is it in the town? Is it in the MD? That we can do together to help the province create what their version of solution is. Because again, I don't want to see their solution fail. I want to see their solution succeed, because if they succeed, we succeed. And again, I think that becomes part of the issues. Like you can look at it and go, I don't think this is going to work, Chris. I really don't think this is going to work. But it's what they're trying right now. So I think then as a counselor, you need to put that opinion into your back pocket and just be like, okay, what can we do as a municipality that is within our control to try to help them and help them get there, right?
but
And
but
to see what
but
we
I'm
can do.
gonna interject here for a second because I want to make
Mhm.
sure I get this on the record. But what the municipality can do is very limited in your capacity.
Right.
Now, we often think that because it's a Cold Lake issue, therefore only Cold Lake is going to have to deal with it.
Mhm.
Last time I checked, whenever I hear a provincial or federal politician say to municipal leaders, stay to your lane, okay, then do your responsibility. Stop
Mhm.
abdicating your responsibility and
Mhm.
actually fund the solutions that are needed for the people of Cold Lake, for the
Right.
people of Bonnyville, for the people of the MD. Because we talk about affordability, we talk about the downloading of cost that the municipality now has to put in. It's great that you've just had to buy this land and then
Yep.
put this into place, but that is not traditionally a municipal issue. And
Right.
we talk about like the photographs of people seeing the municipality taking people away and taking them up
Mhm.
from encampments. But the double-edged sword on this equation is if you didn't do something
Mhm.
and something worse happens, hypothetically,
Right.
who's the first to blame?
Yeah.
You, the municipality. It's not the province,
100%.
it's not the federal government.
Mhm.
So when we look at the next 4 years on this issue, do you see the city of Cold Lake? And I know we're going through a mayoral election, so we're going to have a brand new mayor, depending on who that is. Do you
Mhm.
see the city of Cold Lake being able to properly address this issue? Or
Mhm.
are we going to be talking about this issue 4 years from now when we go into the 29 municipal election?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great, and a great question, right? Because I think like one of the things that I think as a municipality, and I think it's really important for the voters and stuff and for electorate to look at, like when they, if they come out to a community forum and they see us all up on the stage, is really looking at what's the team that you see that you can put together that's going to function together to make this happen. Because so much of what we have to do is building those relationships too and crossing that over. Right. Scott Sears, our MLA. I've known Scott for a long, long time. Back him and our kids went to school together since before he was an MLA. His politics and my politics don't align, right? And him and I know that very well about each other. But I still really appreciate Scott and I appreciate everything he does. And so therefore, I want us as a council to get with Scott and hey, where can we come together on some common values, right? And common beliefs of what we want so that we can take that up the ladder. Like, Scott, unfortunately, right now doesn't hold a cabinet portfolio. Hey, Scott, who's the cabinet minister we need to get with to talk about this, right? And that's really with all of those issues, whether it's the homelessness and crime issues in Cold Lake that we need solutions for, it's infrastructure, stuff that we need for highway improvements that we need. But and this is one of the things that I think Craig Copeland, our current mayor, that's been our mayor since 2007, where he has done such a fantastic job, is really building those relationships and being the relationship person to get and we don't need to antagonize. Like I've gone after Scott before and I've antagonized him before because he's done things that maybe have ticked me off and I've done things that have ticked him off. But at the same time, I hope we still understand that we still respect each other, right? And that we can have the conversation to try to get to the next level. Because again, if we succeed, we all succeed, and at the end, that's the goal, right? And so I really think it's about teamwork within council. It's about teamwork then within our interconnectedness, whether that's with the MD of Bonnyville, the town of Bonnyville. I think that plays the teamwork because again, it's consensus and numbers. If town of Bonnyville, you got an issue, the city of Cold Lake also has, then we need to get together on that. And hey, MD of Bonnyville, you're parked all the way around us, right? So we're a three-headed monster now. Village Glendon, hey, you guys want to come along? Okay, that's four of us now. And
First Nations.
our Cold Lake First Nations, our Elizabeth, our Métis settlements, like these are all things that we can get together on to then try to push to go up to the next level. But you can't do that if you're just antagonizing each other, right? If all you're doing is taking swipes at one another, which we all do at different times, just that's politics too.
But
But
it
at the
comes
same
back to the original statement of as long as you're doing it respectfully, you're not
exactly.
just doing it vindictively, you're doing it
Mhm.
respectfully because at the end of the day, you're all on the same team at the end of the
Right.
day and you have to work together.
Yeah. And I'll go to your point about First Nations. Like that's been a big one for us. Like in the past, we've both, like I would say historically, our relationships with both the MD of Bonnyville and with Cold Lake First Nations haven't necessarily been the greatest, right? Our relationships between councils, a lot of perception issues, just people perceiving each other in different ways. But really like and especially I would say the last 8 years or so, really coming together and talking about this stuff and having those and again crossing those bridges and building those relationships. It's not us and them, me against you. It's us. What can we do together? So our relationship, like we've got a vastly improved relationship with Cold Lake First Nations. I think it's the best in the 27 years that I've lived in Cold Lake. I think it's the best that as we've seen it. Our relationship, same thing with the MD of Bonnyville. When I first got on council in 2010, you would not find a more contentious relationship between two municipal governments that neighbored up against each other. I actually think we got along better with the town of Bonnyville than we did with the MD of Bonnyville, which is a statement. But within that, like I think over these years, like we have worked so hard to improve those relationships and to see that we don't all have to agree on the same things, but if we can find common values and common goals, let's get together on that, take that forward so that we can, because again, if one of us does something and we get a win for that, right? That's better. That's good for everybody. It's good for the region. So let's see what we can do without, giving away, we don't want to give everything away and watch, another municipality take everything that we could really use. But at the same time, if we're partnering up and understanding each other, then, we can win together.
So I'm very cautious of time here. We've got about 10 minutes left before I have
Right
to
on.
wrap up, but I want to talk about a project that I know has been on the top of your radar for probably the 15 years you've been on council and probably even before then as well. And that is that lovely, lovely Highway 28. It is the highway that seems to be the topic of a lot of conversations around town,
Uh,
but it's so talked about that people just don't even talk about it anymore. Tell me you have a silver lining that at the end of this 4 years, the province will do something because we talk about the respect that you need, the ability
mhm,
to call Scott Sear and say, okay, Scott, we need something on the radar.
mhm.
This is becoming more of an issue every day we talk about it.
Yep.
Are you optimistic that something will change in the next 4 years, or are you pessimistic that we're going to be
Mhm.
back talking about this another 4 years and nothing's going to change?
Yeah, I want to be optimistic. And I
But
know, and Craig and I we've had discussions about this and about and both of our levels of pessimism and optimism. I think we both, like, our needles fluctuate depending on where we're at. I am probably as optimistic as I've ever been. It's amazing to think of what we have in this region between our heavy oil operations and Esso and stuff like that, and CFB Cold Lake, and all the great things that are happening up here in this economic hub that we got going on, that we live at the end of the forgotten highway. Right? Like, it's shocking. Like, because even sometimes you talk to folks out of Edmonton and stuff like that, they really, I think that sometimes they think that Highway 28 ends where you turn left onto Highway 43, like to go to Fort Mac. And because and there's a and when you look at the highway between from there to there and from there to there are different highways. And so it's really, and again, it's part of that, hey, like, hey guys, like, we know it's not huge populations up here. We're not hundreds of thousands of people, but we are generating massive amounts of revenue for this province. We drive massive economic growth out of this, really, as a populace, this small region. It's a geographically vast, but people small, that we need to be able to safely travel those highways. We need our ambulances and all those kind of things to be able to safely travel those corridors. We don't have rail up here anymore. So we need to be able to effectively truck transport all of those things. We need the jet fuel, we need the parts, we need the modules, we need all those things for the oil field. Um, but the highway's got to get better. Like, it can't continue the way it is. And so the good thing out of it right now, we're seeing action. We're seeing lots of like, if you've traveled on Highway 28 the last couple of summers, like all that area up through like Redwater, Wasetna, like, now that we're kind of getting further east of that 43 turn through Wasetna and Smoky Lake, and we're seeing, they're enhancing some big intersection projects. We had some intersections that were super hazardous, especially with the amount of truck traffic we have. Like, those are getting improvements. We're getting some widening. We're getting, so it's coming. I would like to see us really get those. It would be nice to see the big announcements. Like, I'm a Southern Alberta, kid, so I know Highway 3, right? And so when I hear, oh, Highway 3 between Bow Island and, Bow Island and is getting a twinning, and I'm like, what? What? Like, you're twinning another 30 kilometers of Highway 3. I didn't know this was a problem, right? But come look at and I look at Highway 28. Like, it seems like every year there's an announcement. Highway 11 going west of Sylvan Lake toward gets some more 4 lane and some more passing lanes, and you're like, what's going on, guys? Right? Like, so you kind of come at it from a different place, because I can see in my head what you're telling me you're doing, and then I'm looking at with my eyes at what we're dealing with, and I'm like, this doesn't line up. And why isn't it lining up? Like, and so that's the part where that's the frustration, that we see, is that there is money out there in infrastructure, and it's getting spent, and we need it here. And so like I said, and I'll go back to it again. Scott has been a really, strong advocate. Our mayors and reeves in this area have gotten together to try to pressure as best we can. Minister Dreeshen has been responsive when we've talked to him about, Like, what do we need? And, and putting funneling money into the engineering plans and stuff. And it's just, we're at that stage now where, okay, we see you doing stuff. We see you making plans. Can we get the big announcement? Can we get the announcement that says Highway 28 between Bonneville and Cold Lake is going to get twinned? Can we get the announcement that says between the St. Paul, Ashmont turnoff and, Vilna, we're going to get passing lanes. Those are the things that you're looking for. Like improving intersections and stuff is great. That's all public safety stuff, but let's really talk about the highway itself, passing lanes, twinnings, like really where that's going to make a difference to the residents of Cold Lake, Bonneville, St. Paul, all of us that have to travel 28. Like that's our healthcare route. That's our economic route, right? These are all things that unfortunately we've really been challenged with in being able to get what other people have, I guess, is, and as much as I hate looking over other people's fences and looking at their green grass while mine is dying, like we want to see that, right? Because and again, it's good for us. It's good for it's good for the region.
So I want to talk about what happens after October 20th. The people of Cold Lake put their trust back in you for another 4 years. What's going to be priority number one for yourself as councillor?
I think priority number one has to be what's our new council look like? We know we're going to have at least two brand new members, right? So we have four incumbents running. One of our incumbent councilors is running for mayor, may or may not get in. So you're looking at two, like, at least 2-3 new faces that haven't been on council before, and possibly more. And I think then my thing then now is, I know the folks that are running, but I really don't know them deeply. And so it becomes the relationship piece. It becomes having the conversations and finding out what's important to other people, right? What are their, like, because I've been on council long enough to know, I know where my number ones are sitting, and probably the folks that I'm going to come back to the table with also probably know where a lot of my number ones are, right? But I want to understand their number ones. Like, what are the things that are most important, that are important to you? And we've got this great cross section and demographic of people that are running. We have the single mom running. We got business owners running. We've got retired folks running. We got people that are still, that are pulling full-time job, like running, business owners. Like, we have this great cross section of folks that are going to run and that are from different backgrounds than mine. But it's going to be, and I think it's important. My stress to everybody, all seven, when we first sit down together, is we need to understand where each other fit, where we sit, where our number ones are, and and again, what can we get together on without creating. If I can't get my number one onto the list, I will support your number ones.
Yeah.
Right? Because as a group, that's what we've said, and I'm not going to be angry because my number one didn't get there, or maybe what I thought was a number one priority for our community at the end of this term is now not part of the top 5. Could very well be, but at the end of the day, because I've always said, is there right? Like, I can have a great idea, but I got to have 3 friends that agree with my idea. Because if I don't have 3 to come along, right, we're not doing anything.
And
Right?
show me who's someone who has 3 friends in politics, and I'll show you someone who has a really deep bench of friendship.
Yeah, and especially the same 3 friends. I can find 3 friends maybe for different things, but probably the same 3 friends for all of them. Ooh, probably not.
So my very last question, and this is the point of time of the show, I turn the microphone over to you, and this is the time for you to be able to pitch the people of Cold Lake who are listening to this, who are watching this at a later date, and wanting to make up their mind. How can people get involved? How can people reach out and ask questions and not stop you at Sobeys? Because I'm assuming your kids do want to see their father not run into Sobeys and like spend 3
Right.
hours there and wants to spend 5 seconds there. How can
Yeah.
people reach out? How can people get involved? And why should people put their trust in you for
Mhm.
council for the next 4 years on October 20th? Chris,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I think, my thing is, and I know that over the 4 years, we get a lot of new people that come into Cold Lake. And so a lot of people know me very well in the community, and there's a lot of people that don't. And so I just encourage folks to reach out. Like my, Chris Binding at yahoo.com, cbinding at coldlake.com. You can get a hold of me that way. on my social media. Like I'm pretty open with my time. Like I always want to have that respectful dialogue with folks. And so that's the engagement piece. Like, if people feel they want to, let me know what their issues are or know where I stand on things. I think that's a big piece of it. And I think my pitch to the residents of Cold Lake is really the same as it was in 2003 when I didn't get there, in 2010 when I did. Like I'm going to do everything I can to, to continue to grow this community, and hopefully by making it a great community for my family, and make it a great community for your family. And, and that's that's my whole pitch really. Like when I look at my career now, that's kind of pushing, 33 years in education as a teacher and as a principal, right? It's been about how, moving young people forward and helping families, be, solid, and like, it's got a big education background, different varieties and stuff too. Like, and I want that for folks. And I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I get that. But at the same time, I'm here to listen, to respectfully debate. I will talk to anybody. And, and if you think I'm good for it, if you see me up, if you come out to the forum on October 7th and you see me up there and you pick me up as one of the ones that would be a good fit for the team. Because again, like, in politics needs to be a team sport, not an individual sport. And if you think I'm a good person for the team, yeah, then give me your vote, and I will try to earn it, right? Because that's one of those ones now, is right. Like that's politics. It's not that I've earned your vote before you give it to me. It's that once you've given it to me, that I've showed you that I'm going to do it to earn that right, to have it.
So I know I said that was my last question, but I've got to sneak one in here because you mentioned him twice here. Do you ever think to yourself, I wonder what would my life would be if I had actually beat Craig Copeland back in 2003 by those 6 votes? Maybe I would be mayor right now. Or are you still bitter about that election with him?
No, like Craig and I have these. We laugh so often about that and the funny thing was, and it wasn't when I first got on, but then we realized, like after 2010, and we were sitting around and we were having a beer. I think we were at an AB Munis, and he's like, "So you ran at 03, yeah?" I said, "You finished something, yeah?" He goes, "You know that I finished the guy who finished sixth." And I said, "I wasn't looking at the name of the guy who finished sixth. I was just looking at the fact that I was 6 votes away from being sixth." And he goes, "Yeah, that was me." And he goes, and his plan the whole time, and he said, "I'm going to be very honest with you right up front." He goes, "If I had lost that election," because he works with the government with running the fish hatcheries and stuff like that, he was planning on picking up and moving. Like he was like, "Yeah, I didn't really feel like I was going to stay in Cold Lake. Like if that was where it was going to go, if I wasn't on council, I was like, yeah, I can do my job from other places." And I was going to, he was kind of at a stage in his life where he was going to go somewhere. So I, as much as it hurt not to get, like, especially because within a week after the election, you talk to about 12 of your friends that didn't, oh, I forgot to go vote. And I'm like, yes, but at the same time, like Craig got on in 03, became our mayor, or is it 03, 04? Became our mayor in 07. And and he's been a great mayor. Like he has been just that he's salt of the earth. He's a good man, who's really walked the line as a really fine mayor for us. And I'm really happy for it, because I think that's one of those cases too where I might have lost, but I think it's Cold Lake. I think we won, and I have to, hats off to him for being on it for that long, right? It's going to be 21 years when he walks away of being a part of this community as a counselor and as a mayor, and hats off to him, right? And again, like I said, it's one of those ones where I might have lost, but I think we won.
Chris, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with
Right
me and
on.
talk about yourself and talk about your reelection bid. For those who are listening, the links to Chris's social media pages and websites will be in the show notes below. Highly recommend you check them out. But also, quick editorial note before I let you go. For those who are running in Cold Lake and want to be featured on the show, reach out to us directly and we'd love to have you on the show. We do have 343 other municipalities that we're dealing with, so you have to do a little bit of the work. You have to go 10%, and we'll do the rest of the 90. So until then, Chris, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for spending time with us.
Right on, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad. I'm super happy I reached out. I wasn't sure I was going to, and then it's but no, no. It's a good interview. It's a good. and talk to Councillor Bailey and Councillor Matthijs, and they're like, no, you'll enjoy having a conversation with Chris. And I'm like, okay, I'll jump out there and do that. And I'm really glad I did. This was a good time.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights from our guest and about this all-important municipal election campaign. Quick editorial note. For those who are running in this upcoming municipal election in Alberta and want to be featured on this series on municipal affairs, reach out to us directly via social media, via email, or by visiting our website at crossbordernetwork.ca. And there you'll be able to fill out the form, and we'll get back to you within 24 hours of you sending in your information. Now, we just want to remind people that sometimes our emails do get sent to the junk folder. So please, if you have submitted, be sure to check your junk folder just in case you have your filter set to a standard, which our emails can sometimes get trapped in. Also, for those who haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platforms, or if you are watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button now. Your support means the world to us. If you can, share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Till next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with the brand new episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.